If you've been paying attention to the general vibe in the United States over the past little while, things aren't going what we would call super well. The election was a lengthy nightmare. Joe Biden appears to be the current president-elect, and current President Donald Trump and his supporters are not taking that news well. Although it's generally good policy to openly question your government, it's not too hard to see things going a little too far in the wake of the latest political upset. So what happens if arms are taken up? What if Donald Trump starts Civil War II? That's exactly what we hope to examine here today. The first thing we've got to figure out is the title. You can't have a sequel without a catchy subtitle, right? I suppose the first run of Spider-Man movies did it, but those are just about as polarizing to folks as the current election results. So what would the second Civil War be called? Civil War II Electric Boogaloo? The Road Warrior? The Wrath of Khan? Judgment Day? These are all excellent if dated options. Fire your sequel subtitle in the comments and we'll see who comes up with the best one. We'll shout out our favorites next time. Now that the title is taken care of, let's get serious. Like, actually serious. Civil wars can totally alter the makeup of a country. It's been a little while since the last one though, so let's run a recap. Way back in the 1860s, there was a 4-year period of total chaos. Also known as the War Between the States, the American Civil War was between 11 southern states that seceded from the Union and formed the Confederacy. I mean, it was only a matter of time, right? Considering how large and widespread and diverse in both geography and ideology the country was at the time and still is, this probably shouldn't come as a surprise. There were mounting tensions over slavery as well, with much of the North modernizing and finding new ways to do things. Agriculture was slowly being replaced by industry, meaning the so-called free labor that the farms relied upon was becoming less and less necessary. While the northern states implemented all sorts of new technology, the southern ones still relied largely on plantations that relied on slaves. However, this didn't stop those in the South from amassing plenty of money. Because of the large amounts of valuable crops they produced, the Southerners managed to remain very rich. As new land opened up and developers looked to capitalize upon it, the tensions between slave owners and non-slave owners rose. Northerners wanted to protect free labor and felt that there was a moral imperative to ending slavery. Southerners felt as though their institutions would fail if they limited the expansion of slavery. This was not up for discussion between the two sides. More and more they became entrenched in their views, unwilling to concede anything to those who would think otherwise. This led to politicians being unable to make compromises between the two sides and pushed a lot of folks over the edge. Abraham Lincoln won the presidency that year, causing 7 southern states to actually up and secede from the country. Thus began the Confederacy, containing South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. Interestingly enough, Abe was a Republican way back then, and all these states wanted nothing to do with him. These days, the southern states tend to skew a little right, despite their Democrat pasts. Funny how the party views can flip like that over time. Well, back to the war. The secession of these states caused a countrywide uproar, and people knew things were about to get raunchy. Before we get into more details about the war, let's see how the run-up to the Civil War compares to our current situation. Back in the 19th century, we had a divided America full of people unable to come to terms with their opponents' values, lifestyles, and political agendas. A lot of the arguing had to do with human rights, racial inequality, and the economy. Folks felt as though they had the correct answer and that anyone else must be lying or crazy. And of course, an election that brought in a new, more progressive candidate was the straw that broke the camel's back. Uh-oh, that's actually sounding very familiar. But instead of tensions rising over decades, it's really been over a few years. And with the internet facilitating the spread of information that may or may not be true concerning people's enemy party, it might actually be more insidious. The general feeling from the Republican Party, especially as their leader proclaims it from every mountaintop, is that the Democrats cheated too, so that's not going to help smooth things over in the slightest. Oh boy. So we're probably staring down the barrel of a loaded gun right now. Maybe not, but it seems as though a lot of the more online Trump supporters wouldn't be upset by the notion of a nation at war with itself. So let's say Donald Trump does indeed continue down the path of inciting civil unrest. After campaigning and holding rallies and dancing under the influence of Regeneron, he'll have a country half full of folks chomping at the bit to take down those dirty, dirty Dems. We've seen what QAnon has done. A lot of these people would be like death commandos, ready to fight until the very end for the mysterious man behind the scenes. Oh boy. While the First War was fueled by anti-slavery sentiment and concern for the economy, Civil War II would have a few extra reasons to wage on. Considering all of the right-wing militias that have popped up all over the country during the past few years, it wouldn't take too long to amass a fighting force willing to invade a blue state. Hell, Trump might even convince some states to secede, just like in the 1860s. If that's the case, it wouldn't be too surprising if more states followed suit over a period of time. Back during the first Civil War, as battles started being fought, 4 more southern states joined up with their Confederate allies. Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina were all welcomed to the Confederacy. And to be honest, that lineup wouldn't change all that much if a civil war was announced today. If you watched our California versus Texas video, you could probably extrapolate from there to find out some more combatants and how they would sway. Although I suppose Georgia is blue now, which is interesting. So at that point, the militia from both sides would be fighting and the United States military would have to figure out what to do. A ground battle featuring a bunch of people in homemade tactical gear wielding unregistered firearms is fascinating but can't look good for the country, especially with all eyes on them following the election. America has a global reputation to maintain. It wouldn't be too long before the police started cracking down on the combatants. Unregistered individuals and illegally fighting folks would hopefully be brought to justice. Either that or the police would pick a side and exert the quasi-military power they've been amassing for years. Who knows? However, the ground fighting would only last for so long. With all the military spending the States does every year, one can almost be assured that the drones would be called in to stop the fighting in certain areas. It'd be destructive, sure, but it would send a strong message. Wouldn't that be a sight to behold? The United States government deciding that it's time to drop all pretense of restraint and actually drone strike some of their own people. Sheesh. If this was the case, a couple things could happen. People would begin to fear their iron-fisted overlords and return home in the hopes that they would live to survive another day, ushering in a new era of authoritarianism. Or the fighting would become much more rebellious, guerrilla-inspired, and widespread. The battle would be fought on many fronts: brother against brother, grandmother against nephew, guy from high school against other guy from elementary school. All the weird little fights you see play out online every day would have a physical space to migrate to, and these simmering tensions would become quite heated. Although let's be real, people are a lot more braver and assertive online than they are in real life, so maybe that wouldn't actually happen. But if a right proper civil war did break out, with states seceding and attacking each other, the country would likely be irreparably fractured. War isn't what it used to be, and a lot of the fights would be decided in moments based on advanced military technology. Innocent civilians would get caught up in the fight and plenty of people would die, all in the name of some strange nebulous belief that one party is pure good and the other is evil, and nobody can agree on which is which. So do your research, folks, and don't take what politicians say at face value. And if there is a civil war called, maybe don't join it. I don't know, maybe fight against the higher-ups who incited the Civil War in the first place. That might be a good idea. What a horrifying thought, eh? A civil war in this day and age would destabilize the United States like nothing else. Although it does feel as though an information war has been waging for the past few years, and potentially way longer than that. When conspiracies and hatefulness crop up in the way they have lately, one has to get a little worried. Hopefully folks come to their senses before anything gets too drastic. Either that or a Muad'Dib shows up and leads one side to decisive victory. So, what'd you think of the video? Do you think a civil war will break out? If so, what would it look like? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more incisive ones from what would the iPhone 13 look like. Pegacorn Lol says thin as paper and 13 cameras, and it would cost at least $2,000. $2,000? Oh, I gotta get to saving. Throff says, yeah, that's the 2012 leaks from the iPhone 7. I had no idea the iPhone 7 leaked. Mine stayed pretty dry. That's what they get for using liquid crystals, I guess. I am the bunny man says, I don't trust iPhones. The last thing I need is my phone spying on me, myself, and I. What are you hiding? Would you like to share it with the class? Smug Speed says, like every other iPhone before it, just slightly better. Anything to keep the stocks rising, eh? And Krish H says, how is this one of life's biggest questions, LMAO? Well, we'll make a video answering that one. How about that? Be careful what you wish for. And that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. I mean, it was only a matter of time, right? Train. It's a seed from the country. Yeah. Darn it. And with the internet facilitating the spread of information that may or may not be true, and with the internet spread of information that may or may not be concerning people's what is happening? Although I suppose I'm about to sneeze. A ground battle featuring a bunch of people in homemade tactical gear